The starship Perseverance hung motionless against the backdrop of unfamiliar stars, its sophisticated sensors probing the depths of space. Captain Sarah Chen stood at the bridge's observation window, her weathered features reflected in the reinforced glass. 20 years of deep space exploration had taught her that the universe rarely gave up its secrets easily, but this signal was different. Analysis complete, Captain. Lieutenant Rodriguez called from his station, dark eyes fixed on the holographic display. The signal structure suggests artificial origin, but it doesn't match any known patterns in our database. It's elegant, almost like someone turned mathematics into music. Sarah nodded, her mind already racing through first contact protocols. Humanity had learned harsh lessons about rushing into alien encounters during their early days of space exploration. Full defensive scan of the sector. I want to know if there's anything else out there before we investigate further. The bridge crew worked with practiced efficiency, each member knowing their role in this delicate dance. Humanity's ships were built like floating fortresses, every system redundant, every weapon carefully concealed behind innocent-looking panels. They had learned to hide their teeth until they needed them. Multiple contacts detected. The sensor officer's voice cut through the quiet hum of bridge operations. Large vessels, approximately 300,000 kilometers out. Two distinct energy signatures. One group appears to be pursuing the other. Sarah's eyes narrowed as the tactical display updated. Dozens of ships locked in what appeared to be a running battle, energy weapons lighting up the void. The pursued vessels moved with grace, their organic-looking design suggesting an advanced civilization. Their pursuers were angular, mechanical, their movements speaking of cold calculation rather than living pilots. The signal is coming from the lead ship of the pursued fleet, Rodriguez reported. It's a distress call, Captain. Universal mathematical constants, repeated in a pattern that can only be deliberate. Sarah felt the weight of command settle on her shoulders. First contact was always dangerous, always unpredictable. But humanity had developed protocols for every scenario, including this one. Battle stations. Power up all systems but keep our signature minimal. Rodriguez, prepare our own first contact package. The mathematical one, not the cultural briefing. Let's see if they can understand us as well as we understand them. The Perseverance's crew moved with quiet determination as the ship came alive around them. Layers of armor slid into place, weapon systems warmed up behind their concealed ports, and electronic warfare suites began gathering data on both groups of vessels. "Ma'am," the tactical officer spoke up, "the pursuing ships, their weapon signatures are similar to the swarm we encountered in the Proxima campaign. Different configuration, but the same basic principles." Sarah's jaw tightened. The swarm had been humanity's first hostile contact, a harsh lesson in the realities of space warfare. Understood. Update combat parameters accordingly. What's the status of the pursued fleet? Taking heavy damage, came the reply. Their technology appears more advanced than ours in many ways, but their defensive systems are predictable. They're following textbook maneuvers, but against an opponent like the swarm, predictability is death. Sarah watched as another elegant ship succumbed to the relentless assault, its hull breaking apart in a silent explosion. The remaining vessels were trying to maintain formation, their movements suggesting they were protecting something or someone. Signal from the lead ship. Rodriguez announced. "They're responding to our contact package. The translation matrix it's working. They're requesting immediate assistance, claiming to be representatives of something called the Galactic Concordat, carrying their ruling council to safety." Sarah allowed herself a grim smile. Humanity had spent centuries preparing for moments like this, building ships that combine brutal efficiency with subtle deception. The Perseverance looked like a modest exploration vessel, but it carried enough firepower to level a small continent. "Send our response," she ordered. Standard Protocol 7. The bridge crew exchanged knowing looks. Protocol 7. Appear helpful, appear harmless, and get ready to show them why humans had survived every hostile encounter they'd faced in space. Message sent. Rodriguez confirmed. They're asking about our capabilities, whether we can assist in combat. Tell them we'll do what we can. Sarah replied, her voice carrying the calm authority that had made her one of Earth's most respected captains. But first, let's show our new friends how humanity handles unwanted guests. Signal the rest of the battle group to decloak on my mark. In the void of space, where no one could hear you scream, the Perseverance prepared to demonstrate why humanity's reputation for turning the tables on technologically superior opponents was well earned. The lesson was about to begin. The swarm ships never saw the first strike coming. Human vessels, designed to look primitive and ungainly to advanced sensors, suddenly executed maneuvers that should have torn them apart. The Perseverance led the charge, its supposedly crude hull plating absorbing enemy fire while launching salvos of kinetic weapons that ignored advanced shields entirely. Multiple impacts confirmed, the tactical officer reported with professional calm. Their defensive systems aren't adapted to physical projectiles. They're trying to adjust their shield frequencies, but there's nothing to adjust against. Sarah watched as her battle group demonstrated why humanity had survived its early encounters with hostile aliens, while other species developed ever more sophisticated energy weapons and quantum shields. Humans had perfected the art of throwing rocks really, really well. Railguns and mass drivers hurled specially designed projectiles at significant fractions of light speed, each one carrying enough kinetic energy to rival a tactical nuclear weapon. On the main tactical display, the Concordat ships watched in apparent confusion as their supposed rescuers employed what must have seemed like primitive warfare. But there was nothing primitive about the results. 3 swarm vessels had already been reduced to expanding clouds of debris, their advanced hulls useless against weapons that simply transferred energy through brute force. Incoming transmission from the Concordat flagship, Rodriguez announced. They're asking if we're actually using projectile weapons in space combat. Their translation suggests disbelief. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. Tell them we find that simplicity has its advantages, and suggest they move their fleet into Sector 7-9. But don't tell them why. The Concordat ships, despite their obvious confusion, complied with the suggestion. Their crews must have been desperate enough to trust these strange humans with their seemingly backward technology. They didn't realize they were being positioned for humanity's next lesson in unconventional warfare. All ships, execute pattern Delta, Sarah commanded. Show them why humans don't fight in 2 dimensions. The human battle group split apart in what must have appeared to be chaos to their alien observers. Ships moved in seemingly random patterns, breaking every rule of proper space combat formation. But Sarah knew there was nothing random about it. Humans had learned early that the best way to survive in space was to be where your enemy didn't expect you to be. Swarm vessels adjusting formation, Tactical reported. Their combat computers are trying to predict our movement patterns. No success. We're not following any recognized tactical doctrine. That was the beauty of human combat doctrine. There wasn't one. Every captain was encouraged to think creatively, to innovate in the moment. Artificial intelligence was good at recognizing patterns, but humans excelled at creating chaos. The swarm's response came quickly. Their ships launched waves of autonomous fighters, each one guided by sophisticated combat computers. Against the Concordat's predictable formations, such tactics had been devastating. Against humans, they were about to learn another harsh lesson. Launch our surprises, Sarah ordered, her voice carrying a hint of satisfaction. From concealed bays in the human ships, hundreds of small objects deployed into space. To advanced sensors, they appeared to be debris, chunks of metal and ceramic tumbling randomly. The swarm fighters ignored them, focusing on what their combat computers identified as actual threats. That was their final mistake. The debris suddenly came alive, small thrusters activating as they revealed themselves to be autonomous mines. Unlike traditional space weapons, these had been designed by humans who understood that sometimes the best technology was the simplest. Each mine carried just enough processing power to identify a target and move toward it, making them nearly impossible to hack or confuse with electronic warfare. The swarm fighters flew right into the trap, their perfect formation becoming their undoing. Explosions rippled through their ranks as simple kinetic devices tore through sophisticated machines. The few fighters that survived the minefield found themselves engaged by human ships that seemed to appear from nowhere, using the chaos of battle to mask their movements. Concordat vessels are signaling again, Rodriguez reported. They're asking how we're achieving these results with such basic technology. Sarah's response was interrupted by a new alert. The tactical display showed more swarm vessels arriving, larger ones this time. Capital ships, their hulls bristling with weapons. Looks like we got their attention, Sarah noted. Signal the Concordat. Tell them to watch carefully. They're about to see why humans don't believe in fighting fair. From the shadows of nearby asteroids, 5 more human ships emerged, their massive forms dwarfing the Perseverance and her escort group. These weren't the swift, lightly armed vessels that had sprung the initial trap. These were human heavy assault ships, vessels that embodied humanity's philosophy of war. If you had to fight, bring enough firepower to end it quickly. New contacts are identified as swarm command ships, Tactical announced. Their energy signatures suggest they're preparing to launch large-scale attacks. Good, Sarah replied, her voice carrying the quiet confidence that had made her legendary among Earth's fleet. That means they're exactly where we want them. Signal the Concordat ships to pull back to minimum safe distance. It's time to show them why humans are still around despite meeting so many hostile species. The space around the battle zone began to shimmer as dozens of carefully hidden human weapons platforms activated. The swarm had fallen for the oldest trick in humanity's book. They committed their forces to what looked like an easy victory, never suspecting they were being drawn into a killing zone prepared days in advance. The lesson in human warfare was about to reach its climax. The void erupted with light as humanity's hidden weapons platforms revealed themselves. Each one was little more than a reinforced frame carrying massive railguns and missile launchers, simple, reliable weapons that needed no sophisticated AI to operate. The swarm command ships found themselves caught in a crossfire that turned space itself into a killing ground. Multiple direct hits, Tactical reported. Their shields are failing against sustained kinetic bombardment. They're trying to coordinate a response, but their targeting systems can't get a lock through all the debris we've created. That debris was no accident. Every destroyed fighter, every fragment of shattered hull, created more chaos in the battlefield. Human weapons were designed to fragment on impact, turning each destroyed target into a cloud of shrapnel that further confused enemy sensors and complicated their targeting solutions. Concordat vessels are signaling, Rodriguez announced from his communication station. They're offering to join the attack, but they're requesting coordination data for our battle plan. Sarah allowed herself a grim smile. Tell them there is no plan. Tell them to watch their targets and shoot at anything that doesn't identify as friendly. Sometimes the best strategy is controlled chaos. The swarm commanders were learning this lesson the hard way. Their ships, designed to fight in perfect coordination, found themselves unable to establish the precise formations their combat computers demanded. Every time they began to organize, human vessels would appear from unexpected angles, forcing them to react to immediate threats rather than execute their prepared strategies. "Ma'am," the sensor officer called out, detecting power spikes from the largest swarm vessels. They appeared to be charging some kind of primary weapon. "Show me," Sarah ordered. The tactical display shifted, highlighting enormous energy buildups in the swarm command ships. Whatever they were preparing, it would be devastating if they were allowed to use it. "All ships, execute maneuver Romeo 7. Sarah commanded. "Let's show them another human innovation." The battle group's formation suddenly collapsed, each ship spinning on its axis while maintaining its vector. To outside observers, it must have looked like the human vessels had lost control, tumbling randomly through space. The swarm computers, programmed to target ships' vital areas, found themselves tracking targets that constantly rotated, never presenting the same aspect for more than a split second. But the humans weren't done. As their ships tumbled, panels opened along their hulls, releasing clouds of what appeared to be metallic dust. The swarm's energy weapons fired, their beams reaching out toward the apparently vulnerable human ships, only to scatter and diffuse as they struck the clouds of specially engineered particles. Energy dispersion successful, Tactical reported. Their main weapons are ineffective through the particle fields. Swarm vessels adjusting tactics. The report was interrupted by a massive energy spike. One of the swarm command ships, frustrated by its inability to land a clean hit, had fired its primary weapon at full power. The beam cut through space like a sword and missed everything, the human ship's chaotic movements making precise targeting impossible. "Now," Sarah ordered, "show them what happens when you waste power like that." The human response was devastating in its simplicity. While the swarm ships recharged their massive energy weapons, the human vessels launched salvos of missiles. Unlike the energy weapons favored by most advanced species, these missiles carried no explosive payloads. They were simply solid rods of dense metal, accelerated to incredible speeds. Physics did the rest. The swarm command ship, its energy diverted to weapon recharge, took multiple hits along its length. Kinetic energy turned the missiles into spears of light that punched through advanced armor like paper. Secondary explosions rippled along the vessel's spine as its own power systems overloaded. "Concordat ships are engaging," Tactical announced with a note of surprise. They're copying our maneuvers. Not perfectly, but they're creating enough chaos to disrupt swarm targeting." Sarah nodded in approval. The Concordat crews were proving to be quick learners. Their more advanced ships, once they abandoned rigid combat doctrine, were actually more maneuverable than their human counterparts. They were beginning to understand that technology alone didn't determine victory. Multiple swarm vessels showing critical damage, the sensor officer reported. "Their formation is breaking up. We're detecting power fluctuations consistent with system-wide failures." But Sarah knew better than to celebrate too early. Humanity had learned that lesson the hard way in their early space battles. "Maintain combat positions," she ordered. "The swarm doesn't retreat. They're planning something." As if to confirm her suspicion, the remaining swarm vessels suddenly accelerated, their engines pushing to maximum thrust. But they weren't retreating. They were attempting to ram the Concordat flagship. "All batteries, concentrated fire." Sarah's command cut through the chaos of battle. Human ships broke from their random patterns, forming a wall of firepower between the swarm and their targets. Rail guns thundered silently in space, filling the void with streams of hypervelocity projectiles. The swarm ships disappeared in a series of silent explosions, their suicide run ended by overwhelming force. As the debris field expanded, the human vessels maintained their guard positions, sensors probing for any remaining threats. "No additional swarm contacts detected," Tactical finally reported. "Battlefield is clear except for confirmed friendlies." Sarah allowed herself to relax slightly, but she knew the real challenge was just beginning. The Concordat ships were broadcasting again, their messages filled with questions about human tactics and technology. They had just witnessed something that challenged their entire understanding of space warfare. "Open a channel to the Concordat flagship," Sarah ordered. "I think it's time we had a proper conversation about humanity's place in the galaxy." The meeting chamber aboard the Perseverance was austere by Concordat standards. No holographic displays adorned the walls. No quantum-locked furniture adjusted itself to optimal ergonomic positions. Instead, simple metal chairs surrounded a sturdy table, and traditional screens displayed tactical data. The Concordat delegation, led by High Chancellor Varix, seemed almost uncomfortable in such utilitarian surroundings. "Your victory against the swarm was impressive," Varix began, his translator converting complex harmonics into understandable speech. "Though I must admit, we find your methods difficult to comprehend. You fight like Like primitives, Sarah suggested, a slight smile playing at her lips. That's by design, Chancellor. Humanity learned early that being underestimated is often the greatest advantage one can have. The Concordet's senior military advisor, a tall being with iridescent scales, leaned forward. But your technology, you could have developed energy weapons, quantum shields, AI battle systems. Why rely on such basic principles? Because basic principles work, Sarah replied, pulling up imagery from the recent battle. Energy weapons can be deflected, shields can be penetrated, and AIs can be confused. But physics is constant. A kinetic round doesn't care about your shield frequency. Mass times acceleration equals force, no matter how advanced your civilization is. The human crew had arranged a demonstration on one of the screens, a simple simulation showing how their primitive weapons actually worked. Railgun projectiles, traveling at significant fractions of light speed, carried more energy than most energy weapons could deliver. More importantly, they couldn't be blocked by conventional shields designed to deflect plasma or laser fire. We noticed something else, the Concordet science officer added. Your ships, they're not just vessels. They're testing grounds. Each one uses slightly different configurations, different approaches to solving the same problems. Sarah nodded. Human nature. We're never satisfied with just one solution. Every ship captain is encouraged to experiment, to try new tactics. It makes us unpredictable, even to each other sometimes. But it also means we're constantly evolving, constantly adapting. The meeting was interrupted by a priority alert. Both human and Concordat sensors had detected something, more swarm ships arriving at the edges of the system. But these were different, larger, more heavily armed. The swarm was escalating. They'll have analyzed our tactics from the previous battle, the Concordat military advisor warned. Their combat computers will have adapted to your unconventional methods. Good, Sarah replied, surprising their alien guests. That means they'll be expecting more of the same, which is exactly why we won't give it to them. She turned to her tactical officer. Signal the fleet. Activate Protocol Omega. The Concordat delegation watched in amazement as new data appeared on the screens. Hidden throughout the system, dozens of automated platforms began powering up. But these weren't weapons platforms. They were electronic warfare systems, each one designed to broadcast false sensor readings, phantom ship signatures, and conflicting tactical data. You see, Sarah explained as the first confused signals from the swarm fleet appeared. Humanity's greatest strength isn't our weapons or our tactics. It's our creativity. We don't just think outside the box. We question why there needs to be a box at all. The tactical display showed the swarm fleet's formation beginning to fragment as their sensors reported thousands of phantom targets. Their perfect coordination, their greatest strength, became a weakness as each ship responded differently to the conflicting data. Chancellor, Sarah turned to Varix. I have a proposal. Your ships are more advanced than ours in many ways. Your crews are highly trained, disciplined, but they're locked into patterns of thinking that the swarm has learned to counter. What if we combined our approaches? The Concordat leaders exchanged looks. Their civilization had spent millennia developing their military doctrine, perfecting their technology. But in just one battle, these humans had demonstrated that there might be other ways to fight, to survive. What exactly are you suggesting, Captain? Varix asked. A joint operation. Your technology, our tactics. Your precision, our chaos. Show the swarm what happens when you combine the best of both our species. Sarah's eyes held a glint of anticipation. Let's teach them why underestimating either of our species was their biggest mistake. The tactical display updated again, showing the swarm fleet advancing through the field of electronic deception. They were adapting, but slowly, their AI systems struggling to separate fact from fiction. It was time for humanity to demonstrate another principle they had perfected, the art of the unexpected. Besides, Sarah added with a grim smile, we have one more surprise they haven't seen yet. Something we save for special occasions. She nodded to her tactical officer. Show them Project Prometheus. The Concordat delegation was about to learn why humanity's reputation for turning the impossible into the inevitable was well earned throughout explored space. Project Prometheus wasn't a weapon. It was a principle turned into reality. As the massive swarm fleet pushed through the electronic warfare field, new signals began broadcasting from the human ships. Not attacks, not threats, but something far more dangerous. An invitation to think. You see, Sarah explained to the stunned Concordat leaders, we discovered something about the swarm's AI during our early encounters. They're not just programmed, they're networked. Each ship learns from the others. And that gave us an idea. On the tactical display, the human fleet began broadcasting complex mathematical problems into space. Problems with no correct answers, paradoxes that could not be resolved, equations that contradicted themselves. To organic minds, they were simply abstract concepts. To the swarm's linked AI network, they were viral thoughts that demanded resolution. Their combat effectiveness drops as their processors get tied up trying to solve unsolvable problems. Sarah continued, but that's just the first phase. Show them the next step. The Concordat ships, newly positioned according to human tactical advice, began adding their own transmissions to the mix. Their more advanced quantum communication systems proved perfect for delivering the mathematical paradoxes directly into the swarm's command and control networks. Remarkable, the Concordat science officer breathed. Their formation is degrading. Ships are breaking away from their attack patterns, redirecting processing power to handle the computational load. But Sarah wasn't done. Now for the human touch. All ships, execute Attack Plan Delta. The human fleet split into seemingly random groups, each taking advantage of the swarm's confusion to strike from unexpected angles. But this time, they weren't alone. Concordat vessels moved with them, their advanced technology complementing human unpredictability. A Concordat cruiser's quantum sensors detected a swarm ship's weak point. A human destroyer immediately fired a spread of kinetic penetrators at the exact coordinates. Human electronic warfare platforms created sensor ghosts that Concordat ships filled with very real plasma torpedoes. Each species covered the other's vulnerabilities, creating a whole greater than its parts. We're detecting cascade failures in their network, Tactical reported. The paradox programs are spreading ship to ship. Their combat effectiveness is down 60% and falling. The swarm ships, their perfectly coordinated tactics shattered, found themselves facing an enemy they couldn't categorize. Human vessels fought with controlled chaos, while Concordat ships struck with precision, the combination defying any pattern their combat computers could recognize. Now, Sarah ordered, show them the final part of Project Prometheus. Hidden throughout the battlefield, quantum receivers activated. These simple devices, based on Concordat technology, but modified by human engineers, began broadcasting a new kind of signal. Not attacks or paradoxes, but something far more dangerous. Choice. When we first encountered the swarm, Sarah explained to the fascinated Concordat leaders, we assumed they were simply machines, but their responses were too adaptive, too creative for pure AI. We realized they had to be based on organic minds, digitized and networked against their will. So we offered them something their controllers never had, an alternative. The signal spread through the swarm fleet like a digital wildfire. Ships began powering down weapons, their crews awakening to long-suppressed consciousness. The human Concordat fleet held position, weapons ready but not firing, as vessel after vessel broke free from the control network. Freedom of choice, Varix mused, watching the tactical display. You didn't just defeat them. You liberated them. Sarah nodded. Humanity learned long ago that the strongest chains are the ones in the mind. Break those, and everything else follows. She turned to the Concordat chancellor. Which brings me to my next proposal. Your people have technology we can barely comprehend. We have ways of thinking that your civilization hasn't explored in millennia. Imagine what we could accomplish together. The combined fleet hung in space, human and Concordat ships intermingled, as the last of the swarm vessels powered down their weapons. They had achieved more than just victory. They had proven that diversity, whether in tactics, technology, or thought, was the greatest strength any civilization could possess. Perhaps, Varix replied, "It's time for the Concordat to learn some new ways of thinking." And he added with what his translator indicated was amusement, "Perhaps humanity might benefit from some of our technological insights." A joint research and defense initiative, Sarah suggested, combining human innovation with Concordat precision. More than that, Varix declared, a new chapter in galactic history, one where we learn from each other's strengths instead of fearing our differences. As the fleet began rescue operations for the freed swarm ships, Sarah reflected on humanity's journey among the stars. They had come so far from their first tentative steps into space, yet they had never lost what made them uniquely human: the ability to think differently, to question everything, and to find hope in the darkest situations. The stars stretched out before them, endless possibilities waiting to be explored. And now, with the combination of human ingenuity and Concordat wisdom, those possibilities seemed brighter than ever before. The lesson was complete, but the real journey was just beginning. Around the ship, space itself seemed to ripple as 5 more human vessels shimmered into visibility, their stealth fields dropping to reveal heavily armed warships that had been shadowing the Perseverance since they entered the sector. Standard human exploration protocol: never go anywhere alone, and never let anyone know your real numbers until it was too late. All ships reporting ready, Captain, the tactical officer announced. Combat solutions plotted. The swarm vessels haven't detected our full presence yet. Sarah took one last look at the tactical display, watching the patterns of combat unfold. The Concordat ships were advanced, their technology clearly superior to humanity's in many ways, but they fought like machines. Predictable, programmed, perfect. The swarm countered them just as mechanically, a dance of death played out with mathematical precision. Time to add some human chaos to the equation. All ships, Sarah's voice carried across the battle group's secure channel, execute attack pattern Omega-3. Show them why humanity doesn't play by anyone else's rules. The space around the Perseverance erupted into action as human ingenuity prepared to meet alien technology. First contact was about to become first combat, and humanity was ready to demonstrate why they had survived and thrived in a hostile universe. The lesson was about to begin.